Welcome to the Work Positive Podcast with your host, executive coach, and culture architect, Dr. Joey Fawcett. Discover strategies and tactics that work positive as Dr. Joey talks with industry leaders who create a positive work culture that attracts top talent and reduces team turnover. Discover how you can create a work positive culture that increases productivity and profits. Here's your host, Dr. Joey.
Work Positive Nation, we hear from so many of our guests who are with international companies, large companies with tens of thousands of employees. Wow. And today, though, this particular episode is going to be of great benefit and interest to those of you who work with smaller teams. You may have a team of half a dozen or something. Say if you're an insurance agent, we work with a ton of insurance agents. So it could be a smaller team like that. Or if you're what's known as a solopreneur. Not that any of us are really driving by ourselves because we all depend on other people. Hopefully you're at least in a mastermind with other people, right?
That's right.
But you as a solopreneur are working with VAs and people like that. How do you create a work positive culture? How do you attract top talent? How do you reduce team turnover among these persons with whom you have relationships, whether they're vendors or VAs or whomever? And how do you keep them on the team? How do you move your goals forward with them in positive ways? Today's guest is that's right, I searched the world over and I found him, the expert in how you as a solopreneur or as a micro business owner can create a positive work culture. He's been my friend for longer than I'm going to admit today. And I am better for the experiences that we've had together. In fact, I right now am a client of his. Work Positive Nation, join me in welcoming the Captain Jim Palmer. Jim, welcome to Work Positive Podcast, buddy.
Dr. Joey, I'm happy to be here. I feel a little naked without the big thing on my microphone, to like dream business world.
Yeah, size matters, buddy.
That's right. Here we're off to a good start.
Excellent. So how long have you been a solopreneur, Jim?
2001, I started, October of 2001. And pretty much a chief cook and bottle washer, as I say, chief muckety muck for about 5 years. Uh-huh. And then I learned, I got into a mastermind and I heard somebody talk about all this stuff they were doing, but I knew they were just a guy in the dining room with a used Dell computer also.
Hey, used Dell computers are great, man. Someone using them.
And I remember asking, hey, I got a question. How are you getting all that done? He says, well, I have a couple of VAs. And I said, what's a VA? That's when I first heard virtual assistant. And I was off to the races. So I got me one of them. They're virtual assistants. And over the next, 5 years, I grew a team of about 14 or 15 or so virtual assistants. I was running multiple companies at the time. I'm much smaller now that I'm kind of semi-retired. Doesn't sound right, but I work 3 days a week. So I don't know what your definition of semi-retired is, but I have a smaller team now, Joey. Yeah. But so it's been quite a while. I guess we're coming up on 22 years now.
Wow. That's amazing. So you've learned a lot of lessons along the way about these VAs and how to associate yourself with the right people. For instance, in that mastermind, right? That was a key and critical piece of learning for you. So as you're searching the world over for VAs, and we literally search the world over now for VAs, right?
Yes.
How do you attract what you would consider to be, Captain Jim, top talent onto your team?
So I'm going to go back to when I really started growing about 2007, 2008, Joey. My first VA came as a referral from the guy in my mastermind, but then I started going from there. Mm-hmm. And I'm pretty sure it's called Upwork now, but 10 years ago, it was called something else. I can't, what was up, whatever, however it started, but it's where you go and look for project work to be done when you're a solopreneur like myself. Sure. And so I never really looked to hire a full-time writer for No Hassle newsletters or an editor when I started writing books, anything like that. I hired people to do project work because I wanted to see how they would react with me as a customer way before I put them talking to my own customers, helping on the back end with deliverables and things like that. So I would hire them. And if it worked out, I'd give them another job. And then I would talk to them, hey, do you want this to be a little bit more, more of a regular gig? Honestly, a wonderful friend of mine, her name is Lindsay. She started with me part-time. She had like 2 part-time jobs, like real jobs. And then she really wanted to get into the VA world. She was introduced to me. She started doing some fulfillment and back-end stuff. And that kind of grew. And like so many people like myself, and I'm not even sure of where you started, but you come to a point where you say, I'm either in this world or this world. And she had to quit these 2 real paying gigs. And today she runs a very large VA firm with like 15 VAs that work for her and her clients. So it's a really good success story. But we always really like to reminisce a little bit about how we started. She just wrote an article for me. She posted blogs, just different stuff. And I said, man, this girl's got a great attitude, because I will hire attitude all day long, and I will train for the skill set.
Okay. Why is attitude so important, Jim?
I don't think you can train attitude. You can try and with it, right? You can nurture it. You can hope to inspire it, and, corrective action. I've just never had any. And, before I started as a business owner, one of my previous life gigs, I was a regional manager. So I oversaw retail stores, and I just learned, you cannot make somebody who's miserable and super talented into a pretty fun person working with the public. Yeah. At least I wasn't able to do that. So I would hire people that, I was in the bicycle business. They love bikes. They love this, that, and the other thing. They're cyclists themselves. So let me teach you either how to sell. Let me teach you some mechanics and things like that. So I just think that's been my experience. Anyway, you can teach strategy, technique, and things like that. You can teach methodology and all the things that have to go into running a business, but you have to be able to bring a positive attitude and a good attitude.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can buy them ruby slippers and teach them how to click their heels, but if they don't have that positive attitude,
that's right.
They're not going home, are they?
Yeah.
Yeah, I got you. So it's all about attitude for you, Captain Jim, as well as auditioning. That's what I hear you talking about. You're auditioning these persons into relationships.
Yeah, because I think you can fool people for a short period of time. You've run your other podcast for 7 years. I'm 10 years on my podcast. And so I will get what's called a one sheet, say this would be, wow, this person is really successful. And I'll know just from my own experience and having done over 500 episodes, over 300 interviews, there may have been some embellishment on the one sheet, And
that is hilarious.
And so that happens on the staff side also. You got all this experience and blah, blah, blah. And then you kind of find out probably a little embellishment, but you find that out over time. So rather than, the expression, why don't we date and go to dinner before we get married, I think applies. If you're going to take on either a full-time employee or, and you have to choose your language carefully in the VA world, because the tax man likes to know, well, if this person's required to do this work at this time on these days, that's really more of an employee and not a 1099 subcontractor. But anyway, so the language that we're probably using on this interview might be commingled a little bit, but we understand, Mr. Taxman, the difference. But in both cases, I think you want to have some experience and see how it goes before you commit.
Absolutely. I interviewed Chris Tuff, the author of The Millennial Whisperer. He talks about courting.
Yeah. There you go. There's an old terminology.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, dating and courting, and to your embellishment comment, I mean, it's really easy to appear good and to be good for a short period of time, but over subsequent projects, you really find out who someone is, and that's the whole purpose of courting in the first place, right?
You are correct. Part of the culture in my various businesses, I like to over-deliver. And honestly, I think I've always been that way being in retail, but you and I were just saying about a Dell computer, or it might have been on the air. I can't remember what line, but I learned this from Dell. I'm a Dell guy for 23 years. About every 3 years, boom, another Dell. And even though I know they're going to do it, it puts a happy smile on my face. So I go online, I order what I want. And with me doing videos and stuff, I'm always, what's the fastest processor? What's the fastest video card? What's the biggest memory? Boom, boom, boom. Plug me, send me in another computer. And they say, okay, we're building it, and it should arrive no later than, February 1st. That thing would arrive on January 25th. And it's always like, yes, right? They build that into their model because they underpromise and overdeliver. So I've always done that. If somebody orders, a newsletter or something, I make sure they get it a day or two. It's just the way to be, because I think, one of the ways it's so expensive in business to acquire a new customer, Joey. I know you know that, but it makes so much sense to keep the customers you have longer. And one of the ways to do that is to deliver a wow experience, because people don't go out and talk about, like, if you go to a restaurant, you've got a fairly good reputation. We're checking Yelp or whatever. We're always doing that now. Well, look at the reviews. And there's nobody in the parking lot at 6:00. So that's probably a sign too. But let's say you go in and you have a decent experience. The meal comes on time. It's good. You don't go like shoot up the flares and tell everybody. Right. But if they do something extra, or if they do it on time, if it's so clean, if the meal's amazing, you do tend to do that. So just doing what's kind of required, even slightly better, is not enough to attract customers, but it's also not enough to keep and retain high quality, positive staff, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. So knowing your core values, and one of them is to underpromise and overdeliver, helps you attract that top talent too, because through these subsequent projects that you work on together, you're able to discover how they roll. And if that's one of their core values too, there's alignment, and boom, you're together.
And I don't want to put you on the spot, and feel free to take me to task if what I'm going to say is not correct. But you and I have been friends for a long time. And you mentioned that we're currently working together. Sure. In a certain capacity. But when you and I got together on the phone, with you being a client of mine, I think, in my opinion, here's where this gets, oh boy, I think I over-delivered on what was promised. Like boom, 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 boom. For half an hour, I gave you a ton of content that I think would be useful. Fair?
Yeah. I ran out of ink. I was taking notes.
But it was, and I'm not looking for accolades, or, as my wife say, don't break your arm, patting yourself on the back. But that's just, that's the way I roll. I think that's why so many people have success and so many people don't. They've got the rules in the bike business. I'll go back to there. When we started really growing and then franchising the business, what happened at the local level started taking on kind of a corporate, what I call ivory tower mentality. And so if you're, one of 30 stores and you had a bicycle stolen on a test ride, people like to try out the bike before they buy it. And most stores have parking lot. Well, that bike got stolen. So you have to report that. Right. Well, somebody in the corporate office who's not used to being on the front lines, as I say, said, all right, no more test rides. You just killed half the sales. You know what I mean? So there's like a knee-jerk reaction to that.
Yeah, so disconnect with the front line, what's happening in the front line. Well, that's one of the cool things about being a solopreneur. Man, you're on the front line. You don't have to communicate stuff back up unless you enjoy talking with yourself, which me, myself, and I always have intelligent.
You get along, yeah.
I'm sure you do too. But being a solopreneur, you can do that. Okay, Jim. So we've attracted this top talent, Captain Jim Palmer. By the way, it's getjimpalmer.com. If you're where you can go to a website, you can scroll through there. We're going to talk a bit more about an amazing legacy gift that Jim has for you.
So, and people may be wondering why you keep calling me Captain. It's because for 5 years I lived and traveled and ran my businesses from that boat. So I kept it because I like it.
From a boat. I know. That is so cool. So what's the website you and Stephanie put up that chronicles that?
OurFloatingHome.com was our blog, and we have a YouTube channel called Our Floating Home. So if anybody's curious about our travels and what the boat was like, so it was fun. It was a lot of fun.
All East Coast for those of you who are listening from the West Coast. However, some really cool ports and the scenery.
12,000 miles in 5 years, Joey, and now we're taking a break on land for a year to be near family and Steph's dad and stuff. So
well, you got grandkids that are growing up.
We do. We see them all the time now, which is great.
I know. Man, life is so sweet. So getjimpalmer.com and then Our Floating Home. Go to YouTube and just watch those videos. They're amazing. Stephanie does a great job, by the way.
She's wonderful.
Yeah, she really is. Still trying to figure out what she saw in you. But anyway, dude,
didn't marry me for money.
Okay, so let's say I've attracted top talent. We're working together. I'm a solopreneur. How do I keep my team in place? In other words, how do I reduce team turnover? Because it seems like, there was a great resignation and there was the great regret because people found out, hey, this company's as screwed up as the last one I worked at. And then now we have that wonderful euphemism, Jim, quiet quitting.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything quiet about quitting. But what do you do to keep these VAs in place and to keep your teams intact?
I can think of 4 things. I'm going to have to write them down just so I don't forget them as I tell you. So there's 4 things, and you know this about me personally, and it's kind of the way I am at work. I like to have fun, first of all. Absolutely. I think humor is so important, not only culturally, medically. I mean, laughing is so important. And I like to have a good time. Now, I do like to do great work, but I like to have fun at work because we spend so much time doing it. Number 2, I pay them well. I like to think I pay them slightly above whatever the going rate is, because you never want that to be this little source of needling. I like Jim's fun to work with, blah, 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 but I could make more money here. So I like to take that off the table. And, for people who are, should I say, thrifty or cheap and don't want to pay people what they're worth, the cost of recruiting and training far outweighs just keeping your people well paid. Yeah. So there's 2 things. The other thing is I am huge on appreciation, Joey. I'm trying to think if any VAs will see this, because I probably should mention some things. But I've been known as I get to know, and I kind of think this is like they're like family. Well, they're not really family, but people, you become very close with longtime associates. So let's keep the language the way it should be. Yeah. I've known people who've gotten in jams with this, that, and the other thing, needed help with a computer or printer or monitor or somebody in some way, shape, or form. And then I have the ability to help people like that. I mean, that's just kind of the way I run my life anyway. Yes.
You have a very generous heart.
And but that's my way of showing appreciation. When you do something that's unexpected and you don't post it all over Facebook, it's like, what do you do when nobody's looking type thing? Like, I don't go, hey, I just helped somebody fix their car. I don't do that. But the people who work for me or work with me know that I do that. That's all that matters, right? So there's that. So there's fun, there's remuneration, there's appreciation. And the other thing, because they are, as 1099 subcontractors, they are technically, they're their own business. Even if I'm their only client, they are self-employed, right? Right. So I refer them. The people that I work with, and I know this, to be true, you tend to attract people that are of like mind. I don't know how that works, vibration, spirit, whatever, but somehow I don't attract a lot of people that are like, get away from me. You sort of, you attract nice people. I don't know. It's probably the way the world works. If you're miserable, you attract miserable people. I know that to be true. Yep. But so when I have other people, and I have right now about 27 coaching clients in the Dream Business Mastermind. And they say, well, I need some writers, or I need somebody to build a website, or I need somebody to do editing podcasts. Man, I am referring my team members to these people. So now, not only is that a nice thing to do, it's a smart thing to do, because if the second one I mentioned, money, ever did become a sort of an issue, and it's something I don't want to leave Jim. First of all, he's fun to work with. His pay is okay, but in their mind, he does once in a while do some nice things for appreciation, but he has given me like 6 new clients. Right. So if I leave, that would stop. So it's kind of a 4-legged stool that I do.
Oh, I really like that. And it's multifaceted. So many times we just want to boil it down to the money issue. Now, I like to pay a little extra. In fact, when I had a guy work on my tractor recently, needed some stuff done to it, and he quoted me.
Mag wheels.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like chrome
bags.
And I look good in the front pasture. So I had this guy do some work for me, and he quoted me a price, and I rounded up to the nearest 50.
Yeah.
Right? And he was like, well, thank you. Nobody ever does that. And I said, well, I want you to smile the next time you hear my name. Right.
That's right. And the next time you need him and he's busy, he's going to take your call.
Exactly.
And he's going to do what he can do. Yeah.
And it's amazing how little money that takes. However, money is just one metric. The other things, I refer to it as family of choice.
Okay.
And there's some people I'm related to. I don't have any choice.
That's right.
But there are other people that are family of choice. So when you treat people the way that you want to be treated, that is the referrals and those kinds of things, it really creates a tighter bond in the relationship. And at the end of the day, Jim, we all want to do business with people that we like. Right?
That's
that
right.
are fun, like you're talking about, and who care for us as people, as human beings, as opposed to human doing. So, man, I love what you're talking about there. Again, the website is getjimpalmer.com. That's in the show notes if you're on the Peloton or walking the dog or something. But please go there. Jim, what kind of challenges do you face as a solopreneur in creating a positive work culture like the sort we're talking about?
Well, as soon as we're done with the interview, I'll ask myself, were you positive? Because, in a large way, I work in an office by myself, but on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursdays when I do my client calls, and then I'm off 4 days, which worked really well when you're traveling. Right now,
Sure.
Go see grandkids, whatever. But for those 3 days, it's basically bring the heat, so to speak. And if that's positive energy, if that's trying to make a difference in somebody's life, I think what I'm going to say is going to resonate, but who knows? You could say, edit that out. But one of the things that I tell my clients is that especially those who are coaches, or I'm helping them build a coaching program, I'm saying, listen, if you do well, the money will be good. But the real pay is when you help somebody as a coach really significantly change and improve their life. See, that's the heart book, not the checkbook. So that makes you feel really good. And I think the challenge sometimes is not every day is like that. We go through the economy, the country, all different things. Yeah. I could go through 6, 7, 8 calls in a day, and everybody's in a little bit of a pissy mood, or just, they ride up and down. I happen to be on a down when they're calling, or something like that. So, yeah, you have to really monitor that. Now, one of the ways that I personally combat that, and again, I think, Joey, we're both of the same faith, right? And there's an expression, you may be the only Bible some people ever read. So how you live your life is an example to those around you, those you work with, those who work for you, et cetera. So I think when it doesn't matter how I'm personally feeling when I'm getting ready to get on camera. Like right now, I am purposely sitting up straight. I don't always do that. I'm sitting up straight. I'm smiling. I'm doing my best to deliver a great experience, even if I don't feel great today. So it's like great mentor of mine, Dan Kennedy, said, it's always showtime. You are always on. Yeah. And he used to talk about, when he would do a gig in Cleveland near his home, he could drive his old Jeep, which he loves. He's got an old Jeep that he loves. I mean, he's also got a whole bunch of super nice cars. I could drive that and pull in, but people don't expect me to pull in, grab a parking spot, get out of the car and walk in and deliver the speech. So he always gets a town car to bring him. Right. And it said, you are always on stage when you're in the public eye or doing that. Right. So hopefully that resonated.
Challenging days, Jim, and you've been through 6, 7, 8 clients that day, and the economy sucks and everybody's in a funk. And what do you do after that kind of day, what do you do to restore yourself and make sure that you're able to, because that drains a lot of energy, right?
Yeah.
It does that to me when everything is in the crapper. So what do you do to re-energize yourself and to make sure that you stay on that positive focus? Maybe like some daily habits you got or something?
Yeah. And honestly, you could switch the thing on your microphone, but I pray all the time. And I've learned to do that. And sometimes if I'm in a little bit of a funk and I go to prayer, it's like if you are talking with a good friend and you're able to verbalize what's been swirling in your head. And sometimes as you hear the words come out, you go, I don't know why I'm complaining because it's not that bad. But yet when it's swirling, I also have book that's always right here because I never want to be looking for it. It's called Jesus Calling. It's a daily devotional. Yep. And it's just amazing how timely that is. I'm like doing that and I'll read this and go, oh my, I can't believe that's today's, right? So there's that.
How did you know?
How did you know? And honestly, you know this about me, in 2001, I was diagnosed with skin cancer. Yeah. And for about 5 weeks, I didn't know if my chance of being alive past 5 years was 50% or 80%. So obviously I'm still here. So thank you. Yeah, but that was huge in shifting who I was as a person, as a man, as a believer, and things like that, because I never thought at 41 my life could be that short. I still thought, well, I'm not even middle-aged because I want to be, whatever. You don't think like that.
Right.
But every day is a gift. Every day is a blessing. And no matter what's going on, it beats the alternative. Right. And
it does.
It's not always easy. I don't want to say, oh, Jim's so freaking happy. No, it's not.
That's why I asked the question. But sometimes it's really tough, and Work Positive Nation wants to learn always from habits that others have. And excuse me one second, but that's the habit. So I start my day with that. Right. If something good happens, it's like, thank you, Lord. I mean, I don't have to get on my knees every day, but the light stays green for longer than I thought it would. Or, you get a good call, you meet somebody, I get to be on your podcast. It's just, if you give thanks like every day throughout the day, it's like the pile of thanks overtakes the pile of crap, other stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Gratitude, man, it really is an attitude lifter. Right. So when you're living in that constant state of gratitude, you're really seeing the universe as one of abundance.
Yes.
And you're being I refer to it as site specific, right? You're not just getting the weather forecast for your area, your zip code. You're getting the weather forecast for where you're standing right there that day, and how it's going with your head and your heart and your spirit. and really being grateful helps lift and leverage the good things that are happening in your life. So I think solopreneurs. Can
I give one more? Do we have time? Something else popped in my head. What's interesting is I was actually being interviewed just yesterday and asked this question because they were very curious about, well, you say you work 3 days a week. I literally do. Now, I call it no call Monday, no call Friday. If I'm not doing anything, you might find me in my office writing a blog or doing something. But technically I work Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And they said, how is that? And I said, well, it's cool, but it took me a while to get used to it and be accepting of it. And what I mean by that is I had initially horrible guilt when I did that. Now, I worked like at that point, probably, 15 years, like major hours, like everybody else starting a business, the old 80 hours a week syndrome. So I worked to that point to be able to do that. But there was one time, and so Stephanie and I, it was a Monday, we're traveling, we're heading south. So it must be October, November. We're heading south to Florida. Right. And we get into this nice little town. It was on the Chesapeake Bay. We put the dinghy in the water and we head over to this seaside restaurant for lunch. And it was but it was quiet because it was a Monday. And I'm like, I feel so freaking guilty. Here we are doing this. We've worked hard for it. We've earned it. We're smart with our money, all this, that, and the other thing. But it felt weird when everybody's working in my world. So one of the things you really have to work at, it took me a while. Now I'm able to help other people. You have to have the courage to live the life that you've worked hard to create for yourself. Because you hear too many stories, people working for that magical time when I can retire. Next thing you know, they're face planting on their desk.
Absolutely.
Because they waited too long.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, man, that is so true. And I think as solopreneurs, that's dealing with that guilt is a real challenge for most of us, because the whole reason we became solopreneurs was because we were good at a lot of stuff and we just enjoy the heck out of work, man. It's fulfilling, it's jazz, it releases endorphins and what have you. So retooling the focus on priorities that are as much lifestyle priorities as they are work style priorities is so important. And that's why Captain Jim Palmer is the dream business coach, right?
That's what a dream business is. If you're a business owner, I want you to create a dream business. To me, a dream business is one that makes it possible for you to live your dream lifestyle. There's other elements, but that's essentially it. And I had a mentor once early on, before I even bought my first boat, before floating home. And he said, you're way farther along than you said you need to be when you were going to buy your boat. So is this going to be some lifelong dream that you talk about forever, Jim, or are you actually ever going to do it? And I'm like, wow.
That drew you up by the short hairs, right?
Yeah. And it was kind of like, wow, it's time to man up, right? And
Or stop talking about it, right?
Yeah, or stop talking. I knew that wouldn't happen. So there's so much about life and business and all the things we're talking about that are centered around courage and just being able to control whatever fears you have about moving forward in that direction.
Yeah, it starts and stops in your head, doesn't it, Jim?
Yes.
It really, really does. Captain Jim Palmer is my guest today on this episode of the Work Positive podcast. You can go to getjimpalmer.com right now. Jim, you got to tell us about this legacy program you got going on and the gifts that you've got just waiting right now for Work Positive Nation.
Yeah, happy to do that. So a year ago, I was interviewing a longtime friend and client, Dr. David Phelps. Freedom Founders is the group that he started, and he wrote another book, and he was going to be on my show. So I'm pre-reading the book so I could sound intelligent when I interview him.
Slightly intelligent.
And at the time, this was a year ago, and at the time, I'm like, this is pretty good. I mean, Stephanie and I are doing pretty well. And, maybe I'll work 2 days a week. I felt like maybe I'll slow down a little bit more. So obviously I was past the guilt part of it, but I just felt God kept telling me, no, you're not going to slow down. You have a gift and I need you to help more people. It's the message I was getting, but I don't want to do that. I'm not saying I don't want to do that. How can I do that without working more than 3 days a week? Cause I don't want to go backwards. And so I pick up this book, and chapter 3 of David's book, there's 5 chapters. Each one is invest in this. Chapter 3 was invest in your legacy, Joey. And I'm like, I certainly know the word legacy. I've heard it before, but I'm pretty young. And then I look in the mirror and go, well, maybe not so young.
Well, I was pretty young.
Yeah, I was. And I thought, what can I do to build my legacy? And how do I do it without working more than 3 days a week? And then I just prayed about it. It took me about 3 to 5 days. And then it just, sometimes it's like either a white hot light, or I call it maybe a 2x4 hitch upside the head. And it's like, what started this whole consternation about you and your legacy was a book. And you have written 6 really good books, in my opinion, about marketing mindset.
Yeah.
A year ago, free, not in paperback and shipping, but in digital format.
Okay.
There is Amazon doesn't like you to have your books for free. So I had to learn this little trick to get my books for free. Okay. But if you go to Amazon as Kindle, all my books are free. You can download them free. No opt-in, no nothing. I won't even know you're there.
Wow.
On Barnes and Noble, I got it so those are Nook books. You can download Nook books, all 6 of them free. And I'm on the iBook store with all of my books for free. I don't get stats from iBook or Barnes and Noble, but I know that almost 40,000 books have been downloaded since I did that, which makes me feel really good. I don't know if they're reading them or liking them, but that's so. Anyway, you could if most people can go to Amazon. Yeah. And there's another guy named Jim Palmer, used to be a pitcher for the Baltimore Orioles. So if you type Jim Palmer, you're going to come up with him. But what I tell people to do, so the name of my 6th book is Decide. That was my mindset book. If you put Decide Jim Palmer, it'll come up. Click on my name and it'll bring up my authors page, and there will all be my books. And you can download them just like that and get quite an education for free.
Wow, Work Positive Nation, just open up your Kindle app right now, right? Or again, if you're on the Peloton or walking the dog or something, be sure to get your Kindle. The show notes are there, and we'll give you really good instructions about how to do that. That's amazing, Jim. I was blessed to give a blurb for 1 or 2 of those books and have read them all.
Yes.
Thank you so much for sharing so generously. So all that can start out, getjimpalmer.com. There are other resources there that you can take advantage of as well. Captain Jim Palmer, Work Positive Nation, always wants to know from my guests, so I have to ask before I ever say goodbye, what's one thing Work Positive Nation can do today to begin creating a work positive culture, and particularly as solopreneurs, what can we do?
I thought you were going to ask me, what one movie would you take on a deserted desert island?
I know you'd take a volleyball and name it Wilson. So.
Yeah, Wilson. I think the one thing is remember your why. And we've all heard that your why is, why did I start my business in the first place?
Right.
Why do I want to grow it? Why do I want to employ people? Why do I want to, whatever the why is. And I call this peeling back an onion, Joey. Sometimes you get, well, because I want to serve people. Okay. Why do you want to serve people? Because I want to do this. And you peel it back 2 or 3 times, you get to the real nub of it. Now, I know business owners, people that do really well, they're not always represented fairly in media, society, et cetera. But
Sure.
the real reason most people start a business in the first place is to make a profit, because with profit, you can support your family, you can invest, you can do all kinds of things. So it is a profit-driven thing. Even a nonprofit, if you're running a nonprofit, you have, instead of, I guess you don't call it income or revenue, you have income, but you have expenses. And how you serve your mission or whatever it is, it is always money driven, right? So there's just no escaping that. The little voice pops in my head. Tell them this. Well, just let me pause for a second. So you know, we support some charities, and we're at this fundraiser event, and it was during an election cycle. Somebody's really taking a task, rich people, right? And they made some comment. At the end of it, I went up to the executive director. I didn't do it in front of everybody. I wouldn't have done that. But I said, you know, that was really inappropriate. Well, what do you mean? I said, if it wasn't for people that do really well, you wouldn't even have this function, let alone be able to serve the people that you serve so well.
Yeah, who are the people in the room, right?
You know, one of the best ways to help poor people is not be one of them. So go out and create a crazy successful business. But the one thing I would ask you to do is continually come back to your why. For me, initially, I was out of work, so I wanted to replace the salary that I had and do it as my own. Then I really started enjoying a little bit of success. So now I want to become debt free, you know, and then I want to have a boat and I want to do this, that, and the other thing. But at the core of it now, I keep doing this because this is a skill and a gift that God has blessed me with, and I want to help more people. So that's peeling the onion back. Yeah. And it's why I'm still doing this, why I'm giving my books away, because I think everybody is blessed with a God-given skill or talent. And if you happen to make a business out of that, or you just as a business leader use those skills, keep coming back to that core. Why? Why are you doing this? How can you make a difference? And keep coming back to that. It's a little bit like the gratitude. If you keep focusing on the why, the pile of crap that might be around you will become insignificant.
Yeah, it doesn't smell nearly as bad, and it composts. So that's beautiful, Jim. Thank you so much for sharing that. Jim, thank you so much. Work Positive Nation, keep your why in front of you at all times. GetJimPalmer.com is where you can discover, open up the Kindle app, get yourself 6 of the best books you'll read in 2023 or any other year for that matter. And thank you, Jim, for your generosity. Thanks for being on the podcast today, man. It's always my pleasure.
My pleasure. Work positive today. That's the logo, the slogan, your mission in life.
That's it, man. That's what we're doing. We're changing lives, as you were talking about, transforming the world. All right, man. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Joey.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Work Positive Podcast. Please share this podcast with your friends who are HR and small business leaders so they can do one thing today to create a positive work culture that increases productivity and profits. I'd like to give you a free Work Positive course just for listening. It's called Something to Talk About, and it's transformed the work conversations of so many people all over the world. Get your free copy when you go to workpositive.today/something to talk about, and you can start transforming your conversations today. Remember, it pays to work positive.